So way over there, a long way in that direction, is a village, or I should say a town called Saffron Walden, from the German Walden meaning forest. And if you look in the other direction, well, you can't see because there's trees there, there's a town, a small village called Thaydon-Bois. So bois from the French meaning wood, I believe. So you can see it says two towns, one of Saxon derivation and another one of Norman derivation. So it shows you the origins of the English. Over there, a long way in that distance, is Cambridge, and also another city called Chelmsford. And in Essex now, we had one city originally called Chelmsford, because it's got a cathedral. And then last year, because of the demise of an MP, Southend, which is on the estuary, the Thames estuary, that's also got city status. And more recently is Colchester, which is the original capital of the UK, I believe, somewhere over in that direction. I was stationed at Colchester for a few weeks in the 80s. It was a massive barracks, and apparently used to turn out thousands of troops. But Chester, anything with Chester is basically of Roman derivation. Colchester, Manchester, Ribchester, and Chester itself. So dry, also very dry. I'm amazed that lavender's doing as good as it is. These palm trees were given to me by a friend last year, and they seem to like the dry soil palm trees. It doesn't seem to matter too much. This one's just about alive. Think with palm trees though, you think they're dead, and then you go to the roots and they're shooting up again. That's a rosemary, very nice in cooking. So I've been doing it. There's no hose pipe ban in this area just yet, but there is in other parts of the UK. That's chard, sort of slightly bitter, very high in vitamin C. You can use that in cooking, both as a salad and as a sort of cabbage. Damn, it's so hot in West Essex. Been 6 or 7 weeks now without rain, and cabbages are starting to form in the ground. You can see it's getting quite serious. Subsidence usually follows, you know, when there's a lack of water table. The next thing you get movement of the earth. So that's not good. So we're hoping for some rain next week, hopefully, please. Next thing follows is hosepipe bans and water bans. We're not quite at that stage yet, but they're talking about it. Some trees still doing okay, berries here, but also a lot of stuff's beginning to die where just a lack of water. And a lot of the leaves are turning brown because somehow it seems to think it's autumn where it's not. It's only August, as we know. And it's all right in Spain. I mean, Spain, a few hundred miles away in that direction, they're used to this sort of weather, but we're not. They have a wonderful little Spanish invention called the siesta, which I think every country should have when it gets like this. Just so dry. And in Spain, they tend to live for the morning, whereas, you know, they get out and they do their shopping before it gets really, really hot. Whereas here, we live for the morning, and we're not just. It's so unusual to have this sort of weather. There's going to be good blackcurrants, not quite so big this year, but they're still out. In a few weeks' time, people will be blackcurrant picking. I think blackberries actually. So there is a difference. This area was a military area. A lot of these things were from pylons, which I think shut down in the mid-90s. It's a shame that English heritage didn't protect a lot of it. So we have to be careful in the sun. I've spent a week in hospital in France some years ago, lack of sunblock. And in the army there was a book they gave us, and it told us just to have half an hour of sun a day initially, then maybe increase it. They're coming into fruition. Very tasty, but buggers to pick. So yeah, otherwise you can get sunstroke, not good, and too much ultraviolet light, not good for you. I think possibly linked to was it leukemia, horrible illness. So we do get snakes in the UK, but allegedly there's only one dangerous snake. It's called an adder, and apparently they're becoming more and more depleted. They can be venomous. See, it's still starting to crack. But around here we get one that's called like a sort of lizard. It's a slow worm. Snakes are lizards without legs, aren't they? Creepy things. So we do get them around here, but one thing that's doing very well this year is the apple tree. This is now 2 years old, and Cox's apple. I've actually done a couple of videos about this before, and it's doing very well this year, but I've kept it well watered and plenty of mulch and manure on it as well, including some sort of iodine seaweed stuff. One day going not too good. But the main thing with these things is keeping the birds off them when they're coming into pollination, because they tend to like the sweetness, and no fruit at all. It's doing quite well. And also this year an excellent crop of pears. These are conference pears, and an excellent crop despite the dry weather. Extremely dry. Don't know what it's like where you are. Conference pears quite hard. You leave them in silver paper and they grow. They get slightly softer as weeks go by, and also you can put them in wine vinegar, and very nice sort of as a sweet after dinner dessert. That thing's full of bees, like a bug house, well, it's put there for the bees, but they prefer to go in people's chimneys, and you end up having the builders round. Also very dry. And this is a new what's it called, cherry bush. Not a cherry tree, a cherry bush. The other one died, so I brought a new one for it, and put John in his compost in it, which is supposed to be the best, so hopefully next year there'll be some fruit on that. Grows in clumps similar to a grape bush in France or Spain, so it's not the traditional cherry tree. It's not as tall, but it seemed a nice addition to the garden. So rain due Tuesday, they say, and then it's going to allegedly rain for 6 days, 6-hour day non-stop. And what can happen then is you get floods forming here, because the land is so dry that the water just runs off of it, rather than being absorbed by the ground, which is what we really want. But apparently it's going to be torrential, but I'll believe it when we see it. So West Essex is quite hilly, sort of rolling hills, whereas East Essex is more sort of flat, result of marshlands. And there's a place not too far from here called Newbury Park, where they're still getting sand and ballast out of from the when it used to be sea, about 10 or 20,000 years ago. A geologist could tell you more about that. This used to be the Epping to Ongra Railway. Nowadays it's just for locomotives, tourist attraction really. But at Christmas it's really nice because they have it all lit up, sort of Hollywood style or Blackpool style. Really attractive. And some of the drivers are going a little bit slower today on the railroad, because apparently the metal can expand when it's overheated. So yeah, we have to adapt to all this. Comes up so quickly. And I'm surprised there's not been more fires around here, bushfires, like in Australia and California. But maybe it's going to come. If it gets much drier, I think it will. Even compost heaps will come up in flames. I mean, going into the city at this time of year is an absolute nightmare. It's like a sauna bath, worse than a sauna bath, to be quite honest. We've just had a new line open called the Elizabeth line, which is not only suicide proof but also got air conditioning as well, which makes all the difference. So you can get on there and have less sweat, less perspiration. No chemtrails in the sky today. So this used to be MOD. I don't know what that stands for. It was MOD. Shame. It's a shame. It's so shame they haven't sort of kept it, because it's a relic from the past, which just dilapidates over time, and then nature takes over. Over the distance is North Weald Airport, and there's something really rare. Yesterday was a Messerschmitt, I think it was, took off. I didn't know there was any left. Definitely German in design. And I really feel sorry for the animals in this. You know, trying to get water. I put out a bird table for the pigeons and everything, but stupid animals, they go in it and they tend to just splash around and use it as a bath rather than to drink it. What can you do? So it looks like he's had a good crop despite the bad weather, very hot weather. I'm amazed. He must have put some water on that, I would imagine. So I'm heading for Sanctuary, and by Sanctuary I mean over there in those woods where it's cool. Sanctuary. Coolest place to be on a day like this. People underestimate the importance of water. It's good to keep hydrated. It tends to slow my mental faculties down as well. Even the water, the lake water level has dropped substantially there. Oh, we need a lot of rain to recuperate. You can fish there, but you need a license, I think. Life still there, plankton, etc. Frogs, probably plenty of frog spawn. So everything's drying off really quick. So the dryness. Working in this weather is just an absolute nightmare. You know, it's not just the work itself, probably isn't too bad, but it's travelling to get to work. Wherever you may work, it's the underground. In the UK, I know in other countries you've got a much better underground and train system where it's sort of air conditioned and you feel cool when you go on. I know in New York City it's got that, but no such luxury over here. White butterflies. I don't know if it's the mating season or not. I don't know if they're moths or butterflies, I don't know. Nature takes over. You know, the amazing thing is, I remember I was in Cyprus a few years ago, and there's a place on the borders there called Famagusta, which is now occupied by the United Nations. And all UN, as I say, the light blue property is everywhere, signifying that it's United Nations. And you can see, you know, since 1974 when the Turkish army invaded, that there's now hotels, you know, with trees growing off of them. There's still washing on the line in places. But the reason I mention this is it just shows how nature takes over long term. If you'd come back in another, say, 200 years, you'd probably see no sign that there was a civilization there. So it's a fascinating place to go to, but I wouldn't recommend walking around in there because apparently it's booby trapped and old cars. It's like walking around in 1974, rusty old cars and Morrises. Cyprus was a protectorate of the British, like Palestine used to be. Over there in the distance there's a place called Havering Ate Boa, which I think was something to do with a marriage, Havering Ate Boa, and there's a water table. There's some big water table there somewhere. Havering Ate Boa, there used to be a hangman's tree as well, and there's still the stocks there. The stocks are there. Where stocks, if you're not familiar with that, is where they used to put naughty people, petty theft, larceny, as I think it was called, and they used to put their feet in there, and it was probably Sunday afternoon's entertainment. You could go and just throw eggs, I suppose, or rotten tomatoes, or even feces at them. And near there's another place called Gallows Corner. So it doesn't take a lot of imagination to realise that gallows, meaning gallows, where they used to hang people there, it's now part of the A12, the South End Road. But apparently on that corner, a long time ago, they used to hang people. So we've executed a lot of people in this country over the years, centuries. I just mention, you know, the name. That's where the name comes from. A lot of the towns around here, I mean, if you ever remember that TV show The Avengers with Diana Rigg and Patrick Macnee, some of the villages in this area are just like set out The Avengers, except that wasn't shot in Essex, that was shot in Buckinghamshire over Pinewood and Elstree way. So over that way, if you keep going over and over and over, quite a few miles away, you come to the borders of Suffolk, meaning Southfolk, and then a bit further north still, you come to Norfolk itself. And a very nice city if you ever get a chance to visit Norwich Cathedral there. And that was featured heavily in American director Joseph Losey's movie called The Go-Between. Wonderful film if you've never seen it. Filmed shot around a village called Melton Constable in Norfolk, another Lavenham, where the lavender fields are. Fakenham. And a bit further south is another town. If you're there, it looks like you're in the 16th century. It's full of like straw roofs and everything. And they made a movie there some years ago called Witchfinder General, and starred Vincent Price. Brilliant film. I think it's on YouTube. I've never seen it, but it's just literally like being in the 16th century if you're in Lavenham. There's a nice hotel there called the Swan. at Victorian tea rooms. That place epitomises England, I think, the way it used to be. So down here, a little bit further down, you come to another bridge, and most unexpectedly, if you don't know the area, on the other side of that bridge is a house called Dial House, where, if you're old enough to remember, there was a punk band in the late 70s called Crass. Crass meaning sort of stupid. I think they got the idea from a Bowie song, I think Ziggy Stardust, I think it was. But Crass were a punk band in the late 70s who had quite a few hits around the Falklands War. Had one song called How Does It Feel to Be the Mother of a Thousand Dead, which is about, I think, British soldiers dying, and also Margaret Thatcher enjoying the glory. So that was a great song, actually. Maybe How Does It Feel to Be the Mother of a Thousand Dead, and all sorts of stories about Prince Andrew's roll down there. Allegedly, they deflected a torpedo away from his ship, and a lot of English guys got killed allegedly, and there was a mutiny, and that's why they were delayed in coming back. So I'll show you the house in a minute where Crass still live today, and they're basically artists and musicians. Penny Rambone still lives there. He was a drummer in Crass, and Steve Ignorant, I don't think it's his real name. He got his name. People used to say you're fucking ignorant. I think that's where he got his name from, Steve Ignorant. But he was a lead singer, and he's now works for the Royal Navy Lifeboat Association, apparently. And Penny was a middle class art teacher, who I think was also Malcolm McLaren's art teacher when he was at Chelsea Art College. Malcolm McLaren, who discovered the New York Dolls and the Sex Pistols. So I think Penny bought that house in the early 60s. He said he drove around southern England and he was looking for something, a property that was right for his mind, and he saw Dial House, which goes back to the 16th century, and they've lived there ever since. And they're quite green. They grow their own crops and everything. They grow their own crops, self-sufficient. I see them in the village occasionally, but they're quite a nice bunch, but they sort of live in a world of their own. Crass, not to be confused with the Clash, another punk band, who did make a lot of money. But Crass, they never sold out to the punk ideal. They had opportunities. I think one guy said that we can market your revolution and make them a big professional band, but the money that they did make, they gave it all away to the miners' strike and also the firemen's strikes at the time. So they were left penniless, and I think to buy Dial House they had to borrow money from some rich friends of theirs, I'm told. But they still live there today, and they really look after the place, you know. And they're not exactly spring chickens anymore, and they do quite well, I think. I sometimes give them a hand. And if you're ever in London, they do gigs still at a place called the Vortex in near Dalston. Good gigs. I mean, Penny does one on the works of Wilfred Owen. Wilfred Owen was a British soldier, an officer, World War One. I'm sure you've heard of him, who wrote poetry, very, very emotive poetry about Tommies dying in World War One, and it was all very dramatic stuff. And Penny does some gigs sometimes with black and white footage of Tommies, British soldiers, running in World War One against mustard gas and everything. He has done it for a while, but it sounds simple, but it's really quite an event when he does it. And to Wilfred Owen's poetry. And I think Wilfred Owen himself, he was shot just before his 25th birthday, as a lot of guys was. There's thousands of deaths. So there's the Epping to Ongar Railway. They're all overgrown. As I say, still in use, but it's a steam train. Sort of Casey Jones. Remember that show, Casey Jones? A long time ago. So it's still there. just coming up to Dial House. So they have a lot of guests, and sometimes they have weekends where they teach you how to make bread, and very altruistic people, really. Dial House. That place can tell a few stories, I bet. They were quite radical. They were quite a radical band, Crass. I mean, they were. Oh God! I mean, they caused a few riots sometimes. I mean, you know, riots of skinheads who didn't like them very much, and there were. I think G was once called a whore by the police, and they've got all these little artefacts all over the place. How nice! I think I will have an apple. Thank you, Penny, very much. Thank you. And they've got a motto, yeah, Dial House. Can't see them today. I'd say hello. Little caravans and everything for people to stay. So you'd never know it was here. I mean, only the fans will know that it's here still. Good afternoon. What are you today? Very good apples. So good, in fact, I'm going back for a few more. Really sweet apples. I don't know what call. I think maybe Newton's discovery or something. I must get a few more. So I say this is I lead a very modest life. Cars and caravans. Very modest for former rock stars, or allegedly. I don't think they'd like the term rock stars, to be quite honest. I think they were just social campaigners, social reformers, really. He has all his own garden. It's so nice. They are good. And like a lot of bands and everything, I think there was some sort of schism forming within Crass, and they just faded away, and they all went in separate directions. They were really like part of a subculture. Used to see this badge all over the place, which was like a combination of I don't know, I think a swastika. It was like everything put on top of each other, and they don't like the term being called anarchists, even though you can go into Dial House. They like it to be called a free house, but I don't think they like the term anarchists. But and they've got a motto, Crass, which I think is, well, let me try and think. It was actually, all is one, all is here, all is now. So sort of very, very existentialist philosophy they've got. And the other phrase they had is, and you may or may not agree with this, there is no authority other than oneself. Which is true if you think about it. You know, if you have authority over yourself, that's it. That is true liberty. You don't need to have any authority over anyone else. Over the last 2 years, I think we know about that. Raises questions, I think, questions that George Orwell brought up in his books, 1984 and others. See there, you see some, I think they're what's called Anderson's shelters from World War II. And corrugated iron was meant to protect you from whatever the Germans threw over, Stuka dive bombers and Messerschmitts, whatever.